Okay, so we're going to look a little bit from Perfect Brilliant Stillness, and then we're going to look from right here, right now, John Wheeler. Now, Bill, this should be interesting to you, what I'm going to share right now. So now this is, let me get my reading glasses. So this book is by David Carse, which I'm sure you all know by now. And he says, in his remarkable little book, Gifts of Unknown Things, biologist Lyle Watson mentions, among many other things, ocean squid. From a biologist's point of view, there are some odd facts about squid, which add up rather strangely, if they add up at all. The squid has an eye, which is astonishing to find in a mollusk such as itself, a fairly undeveloped, unsegmented invertebrate. The eye of the squid is extraordinarily developed. An iris, a lens that can focus at variable distances, and a retina with both rod and cone cells for seeing both contrast and color. The eye of the squid is every bit as developed as the human eye and has the ability to see as well. In spite of this, the animal to which this eye is attached does not have a brain with anything close to the capacity to process the visual information provided by the amazing eye. In fact, it doesn't really have a brain at all. Its nervous system has only very rudimentary nerve ganglia, which serve the basic motor functions of the organism. No brain, no optic center to form images from the vast information received by the complex eye. Also, there are literally billions of squid. They are highly mobile and are present throughout the oceans at every depth, every temperature gradient, in every ocean of the world, day and night. An eye capable of the best vision on the planet, attached to a highly mobile and ubiquitous, but extremely simple and easily reproduced organism with a rudimentary nervous system having hardly any optical processing ability. Now he quotes from Ramesh Balsekar, and he says, this is Balsekar, seeing truly is not merely a change in the direction of seeing, but a change at its very center, in which the seer himself disappears. Back to Carse, it is clear that it is not the body minds, not the organisms, human or squid, that are seeing. That which is seeing through the squid's eye is that which is seeing through what you call your eyes. That which is seeing is all. Now, just bear with me. John Wheeler. This is a little bit of a question and answer, just a page or two. The questioner presents something and John says, what do you suppose is the solid, independent self? If there is one, you should be able to find it. What have you come up with? Questioner. I cannot look to see if there really is one because it seems like it is the separate self who is doing the looking. John. No, not at all. That's just an assumption. It is just a natural looking. Do not block yourself by getting too sophisticated with all this. This is the mind hijacking the investigation and fishing for delaying tactics. Questioner. Other thoughts can be seen as just thought, but not the I thought. John. The I thought is just another thought. But who is aware of the thought I? Questioner. When I am told to investigate the I and see if there is one, I do not know how an I can investigate itself. John. Again, do not get too mental. It is not an I that is looking. It is you who are looking. Just go ahead and look and see if there is tangible, conceivable thing present that you can sense, observe, or know that you are willing to call yourself. Are you a thought, an emotion, a sensation? What particular thing are you? Questioner. Yes, awareness is present, but it seems to be a separate I who is aware. John. This is the crucial misunderstanding, to differentiate yourself from awareness. You are awareness itself. Is that a separate entity, an individual? Everything, including the world, arises and sets in the one awareness that you are. That is not a limited individual at all. It is completely devoid of any individual at all. That is what you truly are. To imagine yourself as some independent, isolated entity apart from awareness is the crucial error. Looking for that separate self, you cannot find it at all. And your identity returns to that natural, effortless awareness that you are and always have been. Questioner. Thank you for your reply. I have had several phone conversations with a particular teacher about all this, and he emphasizes that it is seeking for our true nature that is stopping us from being able to be simply present. John, everyone has a different way of talking about things. You do not need to seek for your true nature because it is what you are. Just notice what is being pointed to, the simple fact of present being awareness. It is so clear and present that we overlook it. In the end, you give up all the pointers. You are what you are. It takes no pointers to be. Question. The assumption that there is somebody here seems to be set in stone. John, it's just an idea. All there is simple, undeniable presence awareness. There may be a few thoughts, emotions, or sensations passing through, never anything else. There is absolutely nothing substantial in the picture at all. If you think there is a person there, then try to point out exactly what and where that is. Questioner. I told you in an email about a year ago that I had looked within when I was very young and seen for a moment that there was nobody here but awareness. So I know that what you are saying is true, John. There's no need to go to the past. It is clear and present now. Questioner. To look now seems to be the hardest thing. As you say, I'm making it mental. John, just let the simple pointers strike home. Question. Are there any other ways than looking to see if there is anyone, for awareness to recognize itself and stop taking itself to be the character? John, just see it. Just see it is only thoughts arising and setting in the clear, boundless and bright awareness that you are. It is that simple and can be done right now.
Read this already.
Right now. There is nothing to get or understand.
Yeah.
Really, just see the simplicity of what is here. Drop the idea that there is some great attainment. What is being pointed to as what you are is plain, old, everyday awareness. It is what is looking out of your eyes right now.
Thanks. Good.
Okay. So, any comments, any questions, any reactions? Bill, what did you think as a veterinarian? What did you think about the squid having these perfect eye without a brain, or without what seems like a brain?
Yeah, that was kind of news to me too. I didn't know what kind of central nervous system they had. It looks like they just have some ganglia.
That's right.
There's this motor function, and that's about it.
Right.
So it's really intriguing. They have this very complicated eye,
Yeah.
as complicated as a human eye, but doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps
Well,
nice case for for presence awareness being on the other end
that's right.
of the eye,
Yes,
receiving the transmission.
that's right. That's and that's why Wheeler ends by saying what is looking through your eyes is present awareness.
Yeah.
I think that squid thing shows that the creator must have had a sense of humor. It's unbelievable. I mean, squid are all over the place. They come to Greenport. You can catch them off the docks. I think it'll be about now or something. There's a season. I forget if it's early or in late, but you just hook them with a jig, a little jig. No bait, no nothing. Very interesting, and they're very delicious. Calamari, beautiful. Wow. But it might be that the reluctance to see this awareness and the role that it plays is that, all our lives, we have lived the illusion of being somebody, of being the I. I mean, that's who we are until you stumble upon this stuff. And I catch myself at times like being afraid, almost a little panic to let go of this thing. That without it, I'm nothing. Which begs the question, are you anything with it? But I think that might be one of the hindrances of seeing, accepting, not so much seeing, but accepting it.
Yeah, it's such a habit too to view the world this way, that we when you fall out of awareness, when and if that really ever happens, but when you fall out of awareness, you fall into the old habits.
Right. What about when this guy says, but it feels like the separate self is what is looking?
We've been conditioned that way since birth. And you're given a name, and then that name is what's doing everything. Since a little boy, you go do this, you go do that, you go this, you go that, blah, blah, blah. And it gets baked in. You're in your total environment, your total society, everyone around you is pointing you into that direction, that you are a person, you are an entity. This notion that you're not, and that there's something wrong, it gets messed up, because then you, depending on your environment, but you get messed up by some kind of religious indoctrination, which really messes the whole thing up.
Mhm.
So unless you have, like with me, okay, I claim it's a miracle that I stumbled onto this stuff, or some other thing like that, that starts to give you an alternative. You're stuck. Every place you look, buy Coca-Cola. So it's not something that you come upon, just you stumble upon it or something. It's something that, like I say, it's a miracle that something happens that gets you interested in this thing, and if you pursue it, then you eventually get to what we're doing now.
What about when the person says to John Wheeler, but when you're telling me to look for this myself, when you're telling me to look for this person, it feels like the person is looking for the person. What about that? Is that what it feels like? And
Yeah,
then, go ahead.
Oh, go
Well,
ahead. I'm
Chip,
sorry.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think that it's as we're talking about, it's this habitual way of interacting with the world. So it's not that we're not, going through these experiences. We are, but we're also going through the experience of the squid. I think that's the thing about it. In other words, life is one, and life is all. So the squid is also that limitless self that's experiencing through that camera of that magnificent eye, a certain experience of the world. And I think the challenge that we have is to drop that habitual behavior we have, which is limited. We have this limited notion that we're this self contained within a body or contained within a mind. And it's that identification process that we've habituated, which says, I am this mind, I am this body. And so I think it's the challenge for us, if we really want to explore this, is the question of how can we expand our sense of self beyond the body and then beyond the mind, and I think that's what the challenge is.
Yeah.
I mean, we have with the body, for example, somebody loses a hand, they don't say, oh, I'm not a person anymore. Or they lose a leg, or maybe they're a quadruple, amputee or something. They don't, but then, so we loosen our sense of identity with the body a little bit, as sometimes as we're forced to, but we can also go beyond this practice, or we can extend our practice into losing this identification with mind. And I think the way we do that, I think one of the ways that we've talked about so often here is that idea of the witness. which is basically just a practice of recognizing that we're not the mind, that the mind is also another thing that we utilize the same way as the squid's using the eye, the same way as we're using this body, we're also using this mind. And so I think it's a great practice that, I mean, it's one great practice, one way of extending the notion of and the identification of self beyond the body and beyond the mind, which is, I think, what ultimately what we're looking to do now.
Mhm. So I have the day off tomorrow. I have a completely free day. So how am I going to live that day tomorrow, having everything that I do and say not relate back to a center, not relate back to a personal me? So I'm going to, and the language is dualistic, obviously, right? So instead of saying I'll say this entity known as Paul will awake tomorrow morning and after coffee and breakfast have his day unfold as naturally, spontaneously as possible. And even though it will look like I'm choosing to go to the nursery, I'm not going to go to the nursery thinking that there's a me who's driving me to the nursery. I'm simply going to go to the nursery as a course of my day unfolding, and not try to do everything from relating it back to a center. I'm trying to, in this fumbling effort, trying to answer your question, Chip. So yeah, how do we put this disidentification into an everyday practice, so to speak? It's easy to see how I could typically live my day tomorrow as a center. Well, then Paul would deliberately get up and very intentionally have 6 things that he's come hell or high water going to get accomplished. And there will be a heavy sense of I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And so the opposite of that, and here's where they talk about the negation coming in. Before awakening, there's chopping wood and carrying water, and after is chopping wood and carrying water. The difference is there's no center in the latter case.
There's no doer.
No doer.
There's no sense of yourself as a doer.
Yeah. So tomorrow, on my day off, I'm going to be doer free.
Yeah.
Doer free. Now, you could say that even the intention.
Well, yes, it's the me's intention to be doer free.
Okay. Well, I'm struggling here to use language and concepts that are dualistic in nature.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to point to. I don't even want to say an intention. I can't even say an intention. I'm trying to point to a direction that would have the expression of my awareness take a slightly different, less self-identified form.
Go ahead, Evie. Go ahead. I had something, but go ahead, Evie. I'll listen to you.
No.
She's digging deep.
Digging deep.
Uh-oh. Hold on, this is big.
Let's go with that eye.
Isn't it just about life unfolding and allowing it to unfold without any kind of judgment? So in other words, to have an awareness, to shine that spotlight of awareness every time the me arises, in the form of thoughts, in the form of judgments, which are thoughts, in the forms of opinion, in the forms of self-criticism or criticism of someone else. Isn't it about
Negate.
just an awareness of, as this me arises with all that bundle of conditioned responses and reactions that then have us identify with that as who we are.
Mhm.
So being able to see that, to put a pin in it or pull the plug on it each moment as it happens, then you don't have to have any intention of anything else. It's just shining awareness on what is arising in the moment when there is the me that has colored the moment. Isn't that what it's fundamentally about? And then along with that, somehow, I don't know if the word is conviction or again an awareness. How could I possibly be the personal doer if the personal doer doesn't even exist? Then what is it that's doing the doing? What is it that's seeing? What is it that's hearing? Is that not consciousness itself? So with those two things, maybe, just maybe, you can let the day unfold and just be.
I think that what is it that's doing the thinking? What is it that's doing the hearing? What is it that's doing the doing? That's a really brilliant point, Evelyn. And I think, Paul, it's not disidentification in a way. In other words, we have to identify with something. In other words, we are, or I am, you could say that, capital I am, right? There is a sense of self with a capital S. The problem isn't that capital S sense of self. The problem is when we're having the small s self and we're thinking that that's who we are. Correct. So we're taking something that's limitless and we're conscribing it to this small little thing of a body and this small little thing of a mind and saying that's who we are. Right. So when we say we're not doing anything, the reason for that approach, I think, is because it's another practice to recognize that it's not the small me that's doing anything. The small me doesn't even exist because that circumscription that's happened is something we've done through our own ignorance. We've taken our limitless self and we've bound it to this little small speck of something. So I think we always identify with something. The question is, do we identify with the limitless or do we identify with the limited? So I think it's all these things are different. They're different tools that we use. Like when we're saying, who's the I behind the I? What's the mind behind the mind? It's always this point to recognize that we're the limitless. We're not circumscribed by these small little incidentals. So when you go through your day tomorrow, you can say, I'm starting the car thinking I, Paul, or whatever your name is, right? I'm doing, but that's not really what it is, right? You, the limitless self, are having this experience the same way as that squid eye is witnessing whatever it's witnessing. You're having this experience as the self, capital S, going through a human body, doing these things, and that's an experience that you're having. But you're in no way limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was when you were telling that pretend story going to the garden shop, I was thinking, well, yeah, I mean, the mind-body organism is making that a feature of the list in order to do it, but everything just unfolds as you're going about doing that trip to the garden. Everything is new for the first time. Getting in the car, visiting the shop, speaking to the shop owner, browsing the plants, everything is brand new. You can see everything for the first time again.
Correct.
You can, but the problem is that in all of this discussion, I think we're forgetting the role that memory plays. The role that, we don't have a mind like the squid. The difference between the squid and us is that maybe the squid has this organism that's an eye, but the signals it receives doesn't go anyplace. It has no software to interpret it. We
Right.
do.
Right.
We do. We have a brain that records. So in a sense, you can idealize the squid because it's always living in the moment. It has no other choice.
Mhm.
I mean, that's it.
Mhm.
Doesn't have the option of considering itself a squid. It just
Right.
has an eye that sees.
That's right.
And
That's
but
right.
so I think that, so there's that point. The other point is that I think that to try to understand some of this stuff in a couple of sentences or some simple terms, I don't think it works for me. For me, I had to really dig down deep and get into this stuff, find out what the brain is, what does it do, how does it work, and get an understanding of that, because it's that process that's created the eye, my eye.
Mm.
And I think, like what's preached often in this thing, the way to get this, one of the ways of getting to this thing is through self-knowledge, to getting to know yourself, using that awareness as often as you can during the course of a day, to see the eye operating.
Mhm.
You can see it operating. It's like, Paul, you're talking about tomorrow. Well, I don't see a problem with that. I mean, there's a lot of things that have to be done, so on and so forth. For me, there's no way I want to eliminate, in a sense, now just hold on, projecting a bit into the future about what I'm going to have to do tomorrow or maybe next week or whatever. But I think my problem is that when tomorrow comes and it's not the way I projected it, now I want to change it. Now I get upset. Rather than saying, well, that's the way, you got up in the morning and you wanted to go do the garden. Oh, it's raining today.
Mhm.
So, it's, well, it's raining. Okay, what else can I do? And I think that's part of it. Part of trying to get away from the, from the prison of this eye that's constantly trying to rule the ship. And the reality is that it really doesn't, because tomorrow I wanted to go do something and tomorrow it rained.
Right. Well,
Ugo,
Ugo,
what Bill was saying though is possible to us. I think all of us have had an experience of that. And what he's talking about is not living in memory. He's talking about living in the present moment,
Correct.
which is an approach to basically releasing the me and basically just experiencing the now.
Yep.
And that is an experience of the now, and that is experience of being. And it's not an experience of, if it's not an experience of memory at that point. And that's why the ever newness that Bill was talking about is available to us. And it's
Right.
also why we respond to that with a sense of elation. We can feel that. So that, you don't have to live through your memory.
that's
Well,
right. You don't have to live.
That's where the problem comes in, because we do live through our memory. And the thing is that all the seeing and so on and so forth, that process, that recording process, is biased. It's biased by our conditioning. So
But Ugo, when the memories come up, like Evelyn was suggesting a moment ago, when the automatic memories come up, they can be witnessed and let go.
And they're always happening
okay.
in the present.
Well, it's the only place
Yeah.
anything ever happens.
Okay, so when you said before, the squid is always in the present, so are we. We are too. And yes, memories come up, but they come up in the now, in the present now. We are never not now. The thing is to shine a spotlight on that. I'm just, I don't know what other word to use. I'm using, and to see when you're not living in the now, but you're living in the future, or you're living in the past. When you're living in time rather than in the timeless now. Just to see it. Just to see it. And be very gentle about it. Because remember, the seeing is the doing. So the minute you see it, you're out of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, or another way to say that, Evie, is when the seeing is the doing, when you're seeing, you're out of it. Or another way to say it is when you're seeing, you're in it. In other words, I know what you're saying. You're out of time at that point.
Yeah.
You're out of the temporal, but you're also, but actually when you're seeing like what we're talking about, you're really in that present moment, right? Which is that brilliant exhilaration of life that we feel when we're right here. You could look at a leaf, you can, feel a sensation, you can, there's no limit to what we can be experiencing in that moment, but definitely can be clear of memory, Ugo. We don't have to live through memory.
No, I know I absolutely agree with you. All I'm pointing to is that most of us live out of memory. I mean, that's it. I mean, we're of course we're always in the present. We can't be anything other. But I know myself. I don't know how many hours, but it's a number of hours that I'm either thinking about something that happened in the past or something that I'm going to be in the future. I mean, there's a lot of time not spent in being aware of being in the present. That's the way we were brought up.
Yes.
That's the way we were conditioned.
Yes, but you don't even have to be aware. You can't be aware of being in the present. You are that awareness. You are that presence. What you can be aware of is when you're projecting into the future or you're dwelling back in the past. That you can be aware of. And when that happens, just to see it and to let it go or to pull the plug on it. But you don't even have to do anything. The seeing is the doing. Because you are awareness. That's what you are.
Also, this experience of self that we're able to have does not need to be circumscribed by our habitual behavior. So we could take anything. We could take a piece of music right now. We could listen, let's say a piece of music that we've never heard before. We can, if we're able to let ourselves just pay attention, or I don't know what words we want to use for that. Listen to the music and just go with that. Then we can be having an entirely new experience that we've never had before. And these new experiences that we're having, what that's doing is it's expanding the scope of our idea of life, in the same way as we can hear a brilliant speaker that's talking about a topic, and he can talk about some ideas that we've never thought about before. And all of a sudden, our notion of what is, sort of expands. Well, music does that. Riding a wave does that, or taking a swim, or jumping out of an airplane does it. All these different things is expanding our sense of what is, and it allows us to sort of allows us to just basically grow to the limitless. Allows us to release this idea that we're this, notion of who we are. Each new experience is a growth experience for us. Each moment of being in the present moment is allowing us to rehabituate ourselves
Right.
to be in the present moment.
Right.
So as you were saying, Ugo, before, most people are in past or future. That's true. But one of the things I think we're looking to do in this practice is to learn to rehabituate ourselves. And it's kind of a weird way to say it, but to get those neural networks firing in a different way where we're actually in present moment.
Yes, yes, that's right. And so what happens then is that the mind quiets down. And so it's not habitually in the past or the future. And there's a sudden realization that there's a calm peacefulness. And that seems to expand that sense of calm peacefulness because the mind is quiet. And you're going about doing what you need to do, having relationships you have, doing the work you have to do, fixing your car or going shopping. But it's with a quietness, a peacefulness, because the mind suddenly is not projecting into the future and it's not dwelling in the past.
Yeah, it's kind of like listening to a radio, where we tune into a radio and you remember the old dial radios we had, you hear all the static, and then you get to the place where you're tuned in to that one frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear the pure signal and you can hear it or whatever. And then you move the dial a little bit and you have all this interference and all this other, like what you're talking about, Evelyn, this mental noise that's basically
Right.
disharmonious and distracting from that pure experiencing of that now moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right.
Perhaps we can try too hard also to be in the moment, to be aware, because that effort in itself, confounds everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what is it that's trying so hard to be in the now moment is the me, the ego. That's what that
Small
is.
self.
That's
So
where it comes from, the
that's
me.
right. That's right. So that's another thing that's again an opportunity to witness that there is the me trying to make an effort to be fully present. No.
Yeah, I remember you were talking, Evelyn, about Krishnamurti talking about, who's the meditator in this meditation thing where basically the me was meditating. And so it was kind of missing the point of the whole experience.
Correct.
And I think that's, I think you're exactly right on target with that, Bill. But again, it's only because you're going, that person that's doing that is going through the experience of the me, with the me driving basically.
Right.
Versus that whole thing with the Christianity where it was, get thee behind me, Satan, and stuff. It was, or the Bhagavad Gita with Krishna driving the chariot. It's all this, these are all these references to putting that egoic self in the back seat and let the self with a capital S basically do the driving.
Right. Right. Because it's doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly. Well, it's doing it anyway, but the problem is it's doing it. We think it's doing it under the guise of that egoic self.
That's right.
So it's like so that's where I say we think we're the doer.
That's right.
Right. So it's not. Yeah. So it can be a little confusing about, I'm doing nothing. I'm this, but it's really, again, it's just because it's that egoic self that thinks, oh, I'll take charge here. I'll do this. And that's the illusion, because there is no egoic self really.
That's right.
There is no separate self really.
That's right. That's the point.
We are the squid. I am the walrus. I don't know if any of you guys know some of the Beatles music, but there was a song.
Yeah, sure. Yes. Yeah.
Now, wait a minute. I don't know if I want to be compared to a squid.
Why not? It's quite wonderful and beautiful.
Well, what goes into the eye goes into a memory bank, and then there's a whole other process. There's a mind that's created with the human being. So I think it's brilliant to make the analogy of that squid with that eye, but the eye doesn't, what it sees, it doesn't record anything. It's always in the present. I mean, and it's because there's no memory. It's because it doesn't have the facility for memory that it's always in the present. And that's the way, I mean, I sort of see that myself. I see that as things come up. Well, where does the thought come from? It comes from memory. And that's, and that gives me a way of when I catch myself doing it, I can actually, this is a thought process that has me creating it. And, it's not very productive. It's gotten me into a lot of trouble and continues. So I don't. So I try when I am aware. When I become upset, anytime I'm upset, I know there's something wrong.
Yes.
And I'm getting to the point where I'm convinced that whenever I'm upset, it's because I'm not accepting what is.
Yes.
I'm not seeing it. I'm thinking that it shouldn't be that way.
Correct.
And then, and so if I can break it down and sort of work on it, it's amazing. It just goes away.
Yeah.
So to me, the benefit of this thing, not so much about experiences, but about just letting go of upset and problems and all of that stuff. Like letting go of all of that, then you really are with that present awareness that you are, which is just silence. I mean, it's not good, it's not bad, it's silence. And boy, I mean, when I can get that silence, that's it. I mean, can I quote a consummation devoutly to be wished?
Uh-huh.
All right, Polly, shut up.
Okay, well.
Well, for homework, I would suggest everyone watch My Octopus Teacher.
Absolutely beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful documentary. It's on Netflix, correct?
Yeah.
It was a wonderful, wonderful. And we watched something very good. It's on public PBS under Independent Lens. The series called Independent Lens.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new documentary. It's on now. You can see it on demand. Awareness and Consciousness, as presented by 7 different scientists. And I highly recommend that you take a look at it.
Yep.
There's also another interesting one of those PBS presentations on the octopus and the interrelationship that the octopus has with human beings, and how this one particular woman, she has him as a pet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Teaches it to recognize her and all kinds of things.
Yes.
To get out of the cage and go all over the place. And
right. You're
takes
right.
it up to another level. Now we're dealing with an animal with a brain.
All right.
Okay.
Thank Evelyn and Paul for presenting this subject and the readings that they did. And I highly recommend the PBS documentary that we just watched last night.
Oh, good.
Visuals, and we're going to watch it again just because there was so much presented to think about, and to think about what you said today in your presentation. I really appreciate you finding these gems that you could present to us. You're so beautiful, both of you.
Thank you, dear. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie. All right, well, we've
Yeah,
done it again.
yeah.
We'll look forward to seeing everybody next week.
See you next
Wonderful.
week. Have a
Okay,
wonderful
Thank you.
week.
ciao.
Good seeing you all.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Buonasera.
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 Ciao.